Well, again, everyone, we're still letting people in. We have quite a few people registered for this conference, so we'll be starting in a minute. Please stand by. Bonjour tout le monde. On a pas mal de gens qui sont enregistrés à la conférence. On va donner quelques instants pour qu'ils entrent dans la salle virtuelle avec nous autres. Veuillez patienter, s'il vous plaît. Merci. Okay, well, hi everyone. It's 11:32 on my computer here, so I'll be starting the presentation. I'm going to share my screen. So hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Charles Thibodeau, and I'm the Nature-Based Approaches Program Coordinator here at the New Brunswick Environmental Network. I'll be your host for this webinar series. Rappelle que l'interprétation simultanée est disponible. Si vous en avez besoin, choisissez l'icône zone appropriée. Simultaneous translation is available, so please select the appropriate interpretation zoom icon on the bottom of your screen. If you do not require translation, please stay here on the main channel. Also a reminder that both channels will be recorded and shared with participants at the end of this series. I'd like to start by acknowledging that I find myself today on the unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq people, but that most of the people here who are participating virtually on this call, for the most part, also find themselves on the unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq, Wolastoqey, Passamaquoddy peoples, and many others. The vast story where I sit today is also called Wabanaki. It's covered by the peace and friendship treaties that these peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties were not about the cession of land and resources, but in fact recognized the titles of these people and established rules of what was to be a permanent relationship between the nations. I ask that we all take this opportunity to reflect on our relationship with the land and the ongoing process of colonization and decolonization that has a profound impact on the work of activists and environmentalists. The concepts of two-wide vision, seven-generation planning, and other forms of indigenous traditional knowledge are essential to ensuring a sustainable future for our planet. So welcome everyone to the second in a series of 4 webinars. Thank you for being here with us today. A big thank you also to Patrick Murphy for his interpretation work and the others on our team. We have Paul Gregory from Nature Canada, who helped organize this webinar series, as well as Adam Cheeseman with Nature New Brunswick. Our technical helpers today, Eleanor Wilner-Fraser and Amanda Page from the NBEN, and all our speakers who have made this series possible. Thanks also to the New Brunswick Environmental Trust Fund for making this event possible. For those who do not know me or where I work, the New Brunswick Environmental Network was established in 1991 and is a communication network that links together some 100 nonprofit environmental organizations in the province. Why is the NBEN working on nature-based climate solutions? Well, they help promote our member organizations, their work, especially watershed associations and concerned citizens groups. Also, for nature-based solutions to be effective, communications and cooperation with many different groups, i.e. public, private, government, must be at the core of the solution. And finally, nature-based solutions are not only cost-effective and last longer than conventional gray infrastructure, but also address climate change and sustainable development goals. From the beginning of the planning of this webinar series, we wanted to provide a structured and informative sessions that will help equip participants with the knowledge and tools needed to successfully incorporate nature-based solutions into their communities. It aims to educate participants on the benefits and implementation of nature-based solutions, provide case studies and practical examples of successful integration of green infrastructure projects, and discuss the financial, environmental, and social advantages of nature-based solutions, including avoided costs from extreme weather events and reduced liabilities. With this in mind, we developed this 4-part online webinar series. Welcome again to part 2. So today, part 2, at this time last week, when we got to this point in the agenda, I presented a short 10-minute presentation on what nature-based solutions are and why they are important. Our 2 speakers last week then gave us examples of stormwater to retention ponds, greening our streets, and even greening municipal legislature and bylaws, and how to incorporate that in the real foundational work of what a municipality does, and kind of guide its infrastructure project work in the future. So today, before we jump to our first speakers, I'll take a little time to give you some other examples of nature-based solutions so we can see where else they can be implemented. This will not be an exhaustive list, but hopefully it'll give you a better idea of what is out there. So examples of nature-based solutions. We often find them in urban regeneration context. In fact, this is probably where nature-based solutions were first started, or a big, at least a big foundation of it. One of the big examples is the Cheongyeoncheon stream in Seoul, South Korea. Essentially what they did there is they recovered a stream that was a highway was built over. And some 20 years after, they see a lot of benefits that come out of that, and it helped to quantify the benefits that that came out of that. And nature-based solutions were kind of sped up in their introduction after this case study. If you want to learn more about this one, I suggest you look at the Wikipedia entry of this project. It's quite informative and inspirational as well. More of a local example, I guess, in Nova Scotia, another example of urban nature-based solutions in urban regeneration is the Recover Initiative. So what they do there is, instead of demolishing old buildings, which we have a lot of in Canada, and creating a lot of waste, is designing an envelope that can be built on top of the existing infrastructure. So rendering them a lot more efficient and even pushing them to net zero a lot of times. They've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and they're also looking to expanding across Canada now. But there's another example of how a nature-based solution can be incorporated in urban regeneration projects. Of course, we have community gardens and farms, which are also important projects to address this. The first picture there is a local community garden in the town of Shediac, not far from where I am. The one in the middle is, I believe, in Boston. These are rooftop garden. And then the last one is the rooftop garden of an IGA in Montreal. So we have to look at, where can we incorporate food production in these gardens, and kind of increase that and look for opportunities to do so as well. Forest and vegetation, protecting them also is very important to address climate change and sustainable development. We're lucky here. Where I am situated, we have a lot of nature parks and trails, but the importance of them can be felt in urban situations as well, and should be encouraged, if not encouraged more, to protect more land. Of course, nature-based solutions can also be developed for rainfall events. I would suggest here that one of the biggest challenges in the handling a heavy rainfall event is the permeable surfaces we have. Just look around you, your home, your cars, the roads, everything is impermeable. And where that rain falls on that roof, at one point it landed on earth and was absorbed in the ground. And now they don't have that. So that's what's taxing our stormwater systems and everything. And it's with climate change overcharging that infrastructure. So permeable surfaces can address that. You can incorporate them in many different areas, in parking lots, in trails, in streets. There's different ways of doing it. They do work in winter as well, and they can be incorporated with other solutions. I did mention rain gardens. That's one of those solutions that they can be incorporated with. We see here the top three pictures are local examples in New Brunswick. The bottom three are, I can't remember where they're from, but they're kind of nice looking. I use these pictures to kind of inspire me to say that we have to think of rain gardens a little bit bigger too. It's nice to have them on your property, but if you're building a huge infrastructure project, again, with a lot of impermeable surfaces, maybe the land developers, towns, or whatnot should look at what's happening with all that water. Is it being handled or absorbed in rain garden sites on site, on property, or is it being pushed to other properties? There's also constructed wetlands. So this is kind of taking the rain garden concept and pushing it even further, working with your natural assets that you've identified on your territory, and if development is at that point, using them to your advantage, and creating these constructed wetlands areas and zones. Urban heat, of course, green infrastructure can play a big role here. Greening of roofs and walls. We can see some pictures here. These is from the town hall in Sackville, New Brunswick, the first and the last one. The first picture, I think, is them expanding their green roof because it was working so well and the staff loved it so much. And I believe the middle picture is of one being built on a building at Mount Allison in Sackville. Tree equity is also something that's being looked at a lot more. This is Vancouver. This is when you set a target after you've kind of done a tree inventory of your territory, and looking where the trees are more numerous and less numerous, you can kind of take more information about the state of the property. Obviously, there's going to be less trees in industrial areas, but there's also less trees where immigrants live, just so happens. And there's not, I guess I'm getting to the tree equity score, and this is what another tool that they're using to spread nature-based solutions in urban sectors. Excuse me. Of course, coastal flooding and erosion. This is something we're a little bit more used to on our here in the Maritimes in New Brunswick. We have a living shoreline projects. Serge is going to be talking about that a little bit more. We also have hard infrastructure that can be introduced. Interesting. This picture here is in Prince Edward Island, and this is before and after Hurricane Fiona. So you can see what these types of infrastructure can do. It can save lighthouses, but it can also help rebuild beaches and sand dunes in front of it, extending the protection, I guess, and addressing climate change. This could be used to introduce natural plantings and stuff there, even reinforcing what we see here even more. There's different ways to address shoreline issues, I guess, depending on the severity of the wave energy. As I mentioned, hybrid solutions can be developed along those. So that's the information I wanted to convey to you today. Just a few more examples of what nature-based solutions can look like. What I did not address here are the numerous benefits that collaborating with nature can bring us. The benefits I introduced in the first presentation last week, such as climate change mitigation, storm hazard reduction, erosion mitigation, carbon storage, water quality improvement, recreational value, food production, public health, social cohesion, increasing biodiversity. There's a lot of them, but we all know that. We all know the benefits of respecting and working with nature rather than working against nature, which is probably one of the reasons we all find ourselves here today. So this brings me to our first presenter, Serge Larochelle, who will talk a little bit more about his project and demonstrate how one community successfully integrated nature-based solutions. Serge is passionate about the environment. Originally from Manitoba, he now lives in New Brunswick. He completed a master's degree in natural resource management at the University of Manitoba and a bachelor's degree in business administration at the University of Ottawa. Serge worked for several years with the Groupe de Développement Durable du Pays de Cocagne in the fields of ecological planning and environmental education. He recently joined the Communauté Rurale de Beausoleil, New Brunswick, as their environmental and sustainable development manager. Serge, over to you. Thank you.
Merci, Charles. Thank you very much. Very much a pleasure to be here today. Thanks for that intro. It's setting the stage for looking at what nature-based solutions can offer and what they look like. I'm going to delve a little bit more into Living Shorelines project, which is a coastal restoration project or approach. And it's as Cocagne, Gondig, Notre-Dame all form Beausoleil rural community. Much of the community is a coastal and on a coastal setting. So climate change is leading to land erosion and leading to flooding as well. So these are issues that take different forms and different shapes, and impacts differ from one community to the next. And a living shorelines approach is one way of looking at exactly those two things. So how can we protect from erosion, and how can we better deal with the storm surges coming into areas? So there's this type of project has been happening for several years now. And originally, the Pays de Cocagne Civil Development Group invited folks from the Helping Nature Heal organization in Nova Scotia to set the stage for projects, for pilot projects and demonstration projects. So one such project was put in place at the Cocagne Community Park. And it's a site that's fairly visible. The marina, walking trails, there's an arena as well. So it's largely used mostly in the summer by the local residents. And the managers of the site were concerned about erosion, sedimentation running off of the parking lots, and also of flooding. Serious impacts over the last 5 years. 3 major storms have come in and have damaged some of the installations. So the interest there was looking at a site that a living shorelines approach would have a big impact. So thanks for going to the next slide. And the one approach we looked was at the shore up situation. So the Helping Nature Heal provides information and manages, basically sets forth an inventory of the site, what types of techniques can be used, and then our community work bee basically was organized. So for this specific site, over 2 days, over 40 people participated and really transformed the site. So to have that so many people working from different organizations, citizens from the community, it's created energy, enthusiasm, and really shows how with consistent work we can transform a place in very little time. I'll give a couple of examples of specific sites at the community park there. So the next slide we'll see the transformation of what was a swale to a rain garden. So we see what the state was in. So it was recently installed community park there, and this was one of the swales that ran basically from the parking lot into the wharf there. And so a rain garden or even type of bioswale was put into place there, especially at looking at sedimentation control. So it's over a 24-hour period. The heavy rains since we've put in the infrastructure has really helped to absorb. So slow down the water before reaching the bay, absorb that water. And we've seen now that there was this fairly strong sedimentation project or problem in that area. And rainwater can be one of the major sources of erosion. Up to 60% of the forces can come from overland rainwater. So we now see that the sedimentation has been reduced significantly. On the same site at the community park, the next site is a hybrid rock wall system. So a rock wall was put into place. Erosion had already begun. We see it there on the left-hand side. And instead of adding more rock, the one approach was to use the living shorelines technique and to naturalize the space. So that's why I kind of see it as a hybrid system. So working with the rock that's already there, including things like filling burlap bags with soil, adding native plants, and putting those into the crevices of the rocks gives that extra bit of soil while the roots take their time, and gives the roots the time to reach into the soil, which is already there in behind the rocks. And adding woody residue, things like branches, brushwood, wood chips, all help to build up that soil over time. And finally, a buffer zone with native shrubs and grasses were used. And that too helps to kind of maintain things in place. And eventually, the big purpose there, the objective there, is to look at building up plant matter so that root systems can get in behind and protect and cover that rock wall. There's a separate site at the marina, which is next to the community park, and we organized a short event there with the community. And there was issues there with erosion along what's a leach field. And so there too, the site was identified as being important to provide some protection in terms of erosion and overland flooding. So the next slide just is, we'll see the participants of that 2-day workshop. So learning the different techniques, understanding what happens in terms of setting of an inventory, and then actually getting to their hands dirty and getting to learn and put together those techniques. So next slide shows a major component there, the natural infrastructure that was put in, which is a wattle fence. And that's posts driven into the ground, and the branches from alder, willow, even birch are kind of woven in and around. And it protects, the first thing it does is provide for that buffer. So from as much from the storm surges as from overland flooding. And so over 300 feet of wattling fence was put into place, and plants were planted in behind, a lot of shoreline grasses and native perennials. And another benefit, of course, the main objective was to control erosion, or help protect against erosion. What we see here, that habitat restoration is also a part of one of the outcomes, one of the benefits of this type of approach. So seeing more local shorebirds, fauna and flora, some of which was added specifically, others where they've come about naturally just by providing them the proper habitat and the proper protection. So the next slide shows the wattle fence and how the plants have come and thrive in and around the area. So there's a monitoring program that's put into place. Helping Nature Heal has devised a type of protocol, and it's looking at measurements of deposits, soil deposits. It's looking at quantities of plants in a certain area, and it's helping now, after 3 years of data, to get a sense of how much protection is being offered, and how can we start getting a sense of the importance in terms of biodiversity. And at the long term, this naturalized site is really helping to reduce erosion around that leach field. So there will be some important cost-saving benefits because of that approach. We see too, sort of one of the big question in terms of erosion on the next slide, is if the wattle fence was not there, would erosion be accelerated? Would it be slowed down? We see by the image here is, again, the benefits and the objectives on the right-hand side of that wattle fence, holding back the soil, providing space for plantation of new plants, etc. So in terms of changing gears a little bit, in terms of what does it mean for municipalities? So the municipalities come on board in supporting these projects. And one major way is by promoting and helping to put together the shore up events or the community events. It's a great way to get the project in, but also a great way to build local capacity. So we've got representatives from watershed groups and environmental organizations in the area and beyond who've come out to help get a sense of what it might mean for their own areas. And we've got local citizens who've come out, given a hand. Folks who are already interested in looking at alternatives, who perhaps have rock wall armoring or have seen their neighbors put some in and are looking for alternatives. So these types of workshops, in some cases, are sufficient for individuals to start taking on and incorporating elements of a living shoreline project. In other cases, it's created conversations between local landscape professionals, for instance, and these property owners. So getting a sense of is there support, is there capacity to undertake living shorelines projects in the area? So seeing an increase in that request. And finally, working with NGOs, working with community groups, with watershed associations is really key, partly because of this learning opportunity and mostly because of the networks that were created and maintained by these organizations. So they've built a certain level of trust with the population, with the residents, and it's providing a great opportunity of getting the word out of undertaking pilot projects and also getting the results and the lessons learned in as well. So it's got those benefits. And maybe just some take-home messages or takeaway messages in terms of others, municipalities who are interested in looking at shoreline or living shoreline projects for their own areas. Definitely searching out that initial work, the initial consultation or advice from organizations like Helping Nature Heal. There are several different approaches, and living shorelines will have more or less of an impact or efficiency depending on what type of technique is used, given the type of site. So how much energy comes from tidal or comes from tidal ocean or even storm surges, and is there already buffering happening in an area? Can we enhance that level of buffering? Plus, at the same time, building up the natural habitats. And still, for sure, what we would like to see is maintain capacity at all levels of government in terms of approaches and how to put into place living shorelines and nature-based solutions. And at the end of the day, if we start seeing the public and municipalities starting to undertake these nature-based projects, it's by working along the coast, by beginning to understand the dynamics of it, that we'll find successful approaches and be able to tweak those and adapt those as the changes continue to occur. So I had a final slide there looking at just the different partners and how, again, that importance of working together. So thanks for this opportunity. If there's time for some questions at the end of the presentation, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Sal. Sorry, I screwed up on the slides there, having multiple screens.
No worries. I saw them move along. Thanks for doing that.
So thanks for that, Selj. If we do have time at the end of our next presentation, we'll be asking or taking questions from the folks. Right now, I'd like to introduce our next speakers. So Selj showed us how one municipality can incorporate a nature-based solution. I guess our next speakers will talk about how multiple municipalities can join together and create a nature-based solution. So we have two speakers for our next presentation. We have Zach Burrows, who joined the Stewardship Association of Municipalities in 2021 as a conservation biologist. He's served as the executive director of the organization since 2022. After receiving an honors Bachelor's of Arts degree with a specialization in history from the University of Ottawa, Zach started in the environmental industry as a Red Seal certified landscape horticulturist and later acquired a fish and wildlife technician diploma from the College of the North Atlantic. From the rugged coastline to the Avalon Peninsula, the rocky tablelands of Newfoundland's west coast to the sandy shores of Nova Scotia, Zach has practiced conservation across Newfoundland and throughout Atlantic Canada for a myriad of species and their habitats. We also have Jonathan Sharp. He's a habitat ecologist with the Provincial Wildlife Division of the Department of Fisheries, Forestry, and Agriculture of Newfoundland and Labrador. Since 2007, he has also been the Provincial Program Coordinator for the Eastern Habitat Joint Venture in Newfoundland and Labrador, whose flagship program is working with municipal councils on the conservation of wildlife habitat found within municipal planning boundaries. The province partners work closely with the Stewardship Association of Municipalities Incorporated on the facilitation and implementation of this program. So I think Zach is gonna lead things off. So over to you. Thanks for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. And I'm sharing my screen. Can everyone see it? Thumbs up. Excellent. Thank you. Love the thumbs up. And everyone can hear me, I assume, because we all gave thumbs up. So yes, I'm here today with myself as Zach Burrows. I'm the Executive Director of Stewardship Association, and with me is Jonathan Sharp, the provincial wildlife biologist. So we're going to explain, I guess, the program itself. John's going to explain its inception, why it exists, why the municipal stewardship program exists and how it's implemented in Newfoundland and Labrador, and then why the Stewardship Association exists and how we support that program as a program. John, if you wanted to start it off.
Sure. Hi, folks. I appreciate very much the opportunity to chat with you today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about, I guess, our approach, keeping in mind that there's many approaches to this, and I'll just tell you a little bit about our history and how we ended up where we are. And so, Zach, are you moving the slides? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I am. I just need to find it. Here we go. Sorry, that's everyone seeing that screen. Like Charles, I am also not as tech savvy, so that's fine. Can we see it now?
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Yeah.
So I remember going to the National Stewardship Conference in Calgary a number of years ago, and people said that the government is involved in habitat conservation and stewardship. And people were kind of amazed by that at the time. And I didn't really realize the context of that. And I said, yeah, we are. And we like to define, I guess, what we're involved in, because part of that puzzle is trying to have some sense of where you approach it from. And so when we're working with municipal councils, they understand very much and talk a lot about financial and economic stewardship, for example. And so we do define that as, I think it's one of the dictionaries, I think Webster's defines as the careful and responsible management of something entrusted into one's care. And you tend to see pictures like this when you think of stewardship. Now let's move forward a little bit, Zach. I don't know if I tend to think of it in terms of my children, in terms of stewardship. And when we talk to municipalities, often that is what municipal councillors are thinking about as well. It's one of the primary reasons they're involved. And there they are, as to why they do what they do. And we find that resonates a lot with municipal councils and staff, people like yourself, Serge, I'm sure, in terms of why you're involved in what you do. So we can move forward again. So this is part of the Eastern Habitat Joint Venture, as you heard in, I guess, my introduction. And when in 1989, when Canada really got involved in this, and certainly the Eastern Habitat Joint Venture, which of course includes New Brunswick, our original focus was certainly and still remains on wetlands for ducks, right? It was all about, can we rear up some ducks and send them down to the United States, mostly so they can shoot them, to be quite honest. We were trying to bring back waterfowl populations at the time from 1970s lows, but that was kind of the history. Things have evolved a bit, and in this province, we were wondering how. So I should back up a little bit and say in a lot of the parts of certainly the maritime provinces and most of Eastern Canada, a lot of the joint venture programs involve digging holes and building dams. And so we're trying to create new wetlands that have been lost or restore ones that have been lost. In this province, we haven't experienced a significant percentage of loss, thankfully. We've lost plenty of wetlands, but not nearly on the scale that has happened in, say, Nova Scotia, for example, or Prince Edward Island in particular. So we also recognize our realities is that we have some 70% of our land is crown land. So when we were looking at, in terms of getting involved in this, there's a recognition that, and some people estimate that as higher, depending how you want to look at it, corporate ownership and things like that. But the opportunity was there for the province as the landowner, if you will, to have a significant role in habitat conservation and stewardship. And so that was kind of the approach we took at it. Again, our historical wetland loss was not as great as perhaps other provinces experienced. Southern Ontario, you hear estimates in the 90-odd% of loss of regional wetlands, for example. Obviously, much like the rest of Atlantic Canada, our residents live primarily within municipalities. We don't have counties in this province. That's where most of the development pressure was and still generally is, despite mega projects across the province. That's certainly where wetland loss occurs in small, sometimes unnoticed, ongoing habitat. So that was kind of where we started. So again, this tale of two governments. We recognize that municipalities within the province, as another entity with jurisdiction over land, in addition to the Crown, the municipalities have a jurisdiction in terms of the management of the land through their municipal habitat. Well, they don't often call them municipal habitat plans. They're municipal plans. And very few of them in this province, for example. Serge, it's really neat to see your job title. I've never met anyone like you in this province. We're lucky if we have a part-time clerk in many of our municipalities. And so in most cases, they've never thought about the fact as a municipal council that they could contribute to natural asset management, to nature-based climate solutions, none of which, of course, was thought of when we first started doing this. But it turns out we're doing some of that as time has gone on. So that recognition that there was jurisdiction by both the Crown and the municipality over this Crown land, and those are the two primary entities, led us down the road where we are. That is possible in other provinces of Canada. It would be done differently, but it is absolutely possible. It certainly is in New Brunswick. So I would go forward from that, if you could, Zach. So the concept was that we created a municipal habitat stewardship program that still exists today. I'm fortunate to be involved in the legacy of that. I didn't create the program, but I'm really pleased to be part of continuing to implement it. So the idea, again, we would work with the municipality, we would identify special spots. So in a lot of cases, municipalities manage land within what are known as municipal planning boundaries. And those planning boundaries, in a lot of cases, were drafted on the basis of their watershed. So, recognizing where water flows, and in a lot of cases, they manage a significant percentage of the land. In other words, a watershed can be a very large area in many cases, particularly in this province. And so there was a recognition that they could play a large role in this. So what we formally do is we work with them to sign an agreement between the province and the municipality, the two owners, if you will, of that land, the two managers, the two stewards of that land, seeking to conserve important areas that we find within that. That has taken many forms over the years. As I told you, our history is in ducks and wetlands, and so we started looking at the wet areas, and we still do. But over the years, certainly, our municipalities are along the coast. We've started looking at coastlines. We started looking at species of risk habitat, riparian habitat, for example, in terms of Atlantic salmon, for example, and rivers and ponds, where at-risk species, for example, are found. So it's evolved quite a bit in terms of what you might consider quote unquote important wildlife habitat. Importantly, this last bullet we shouldn't skip over, and Zach's going to tell you more about that, but we seek to engage that community. So we sign an agreement, we draw a circle on the land and say this spot is important to us both, we agree to conserve it. We are then, that's not the end of the day, we don't all go home at that point. We then are seeking to engage that community in things like certainly education and awareness, restoration and enhancement projects, many like the projects Serge described, that are exciting to see, some of which are different and more advanced than where we are, but we've been, over the years, there's been many different things that have occurred as a result of a community saying, we are a conservation community. We are involved in stewardship. We support this. And the result has been involvement of counselors, staff, and residents involved in projects like that. So that's been one of the most exciting things involved in this, is what comes outside of the actual formal agreement that conserves a certain number of acres of habitat or natural assets, if you will, or carbon sinks in many cases, the wetlands as they use the new language, right? That's been one of probably the most exciting part. And we often say it's probably the most powerful part of what we call stewardship agreements. So I think I got one more there, Zach. So yeah, so that agreement commits us. So you can see at the end of the day, there's a map and there's a polygon of an area that we conserve. We signed the first in 1993. There's some 50 odd now in the province that are involved in this now. I think we're over 72,000 hectares or something there, acres or whatever it is across the province. And we've had a little bit of success, we'd like to think, at doing that. Probably over 85% of the people of the province live in a stewardship community at this point. Probably half of those agreements have been re-signed over time, where we've expanded the acres of agreements, or the acres of habitat, sorry, that were involved in the initial agreement, where they've come back and said, hey, this isn't such a bad thing. Let's include additional areas within this. And over time, one of the big parts of doing this is managing future development in partnership with the municipality. And as Crown land, we can have an influence as a mutual partner for the Crown can, as well as the municipality through its development. And the agreement is essentially an intent to zone. So the town agrees that we are going to zone this piece of habitat conservation or environmental protection. Your language in New Brunswick may be different, but and we want appropriate zoning, and then the partners manage that land in light of that zoning. And we can remind them that this was the commitment of past councils and vice versa over time. So I think, is that all for me, Zach, or is there one more?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. Oh,
Okay.
Goals, yes. I mean, no, this is a nice segue now. If you wanted to take this last slide, John.
Okay, Zach, I think at this point, this is kind of moving into the Stewardship Association.
So the Stewardship Association, we exist. We are a nonprofit that it's a province-wide that exists from Labrador to Newfoundland, and we are a province-wide environmental nonprofit that supports our members, our municipal members that have signed these agreements. So municipalities sign the agreement, and this is between the province and the municipality. And this is a formal declaration of their public commitment, as John said, through the municipal planning zoning process, through their municipal plan, through development regulations. It's a formal commitment. And then we as an organization are there to support them in this engagement, in their stewardship of those areas and conservation of those areas. But as John, it's often the indirect support that we are able to provide, knowing that capacities are municipalities in Newfoundland and Labrador, and especially in rural Newfoundland and Labrador, they struggle with capacity issues. So it's a way for us as an organization to support these municipalities in their conservation and stewardship of their important areas they identify, but then also the engagement of their residents in this concept. So I'm just going to take a step back. The goals of the agreement are about, like I said, empowering these communities to take protection of their wildlife habitat. So they've drawn a boundary and identified these as important. Well, they're now empowered to do that through the agreement, through the municipal plan, which the agreement would be incorporated to, and then through just engaging us. We are then assisting these communities in identifying these important natural assets, which are then used as natural assets in terms of the money value given back to the economy, given back to the community. We're maintaining and increasing the wildlife use of these habitats. Stewardship is both an ethic and an action. So the action is actually protecting these areas. Stewardship is protecting these areas in a municipal plan, drawing that boundary, and then managing those areas. That's the action. And then the ethic comes through in our education and awareness, and the fact that it's such a public declaration from these councillors, from elected officials in their town, from the staff people. So it's a public recognition that the town is saying these are important areas. We care about them and we value them, and we want to make sure that they're there for future communities, for our future residences. So I'm going to keep. So who are we? We're a nonprofit that works to support our 50 member municipalities. We do this. We manage our website. On our website, we've got every profile of all our 50 members, which then show that beautiful areas on a map, summarize the biodiversity within these areas, provide a reflection about why it's important. And so we house the profile on our website. We promote it through social media. There's educational resources on this website. There's funding sources. So this is one avenue we're able to support our members just by providing them with this avenue for engagement. Our funding partners, this is who funds our work. So it as John mentioned, our foundation was in wetlands, but we've been able over the years realizing municipalities have a holistic approach. They're looking to support conservation of their entire planning boundary, and that's not just on wetlands. So it is important to be holistic and approach the salmon habitat within or the important salmon rivers within that if they have, or species at risk habitat. So we are able to identify different areas and significant wetlands. So we approach municipalities, which ones we find that they have valuable habitat and we've identified them having valuable habitat, or they approach us based on their needs. They've said, hey, we have a really important wetland in our town. We want to do something to protect it. And what can we do? What options do we have available to us? So this is just demonstrating that it's not one type of species or one type of habitat. It's approaching the entire municipality and supporting them in their goals of a whole stewardship conservation mindset. So what are our primary roles? We're kind of just continuing to alluding this is bringing these two entities that have jurisdiction in the municipality together and saying, yeah, we both agree that this land is important, the province recognizing it, the municipality recognizing it, and then managing that land together. But then we're also engaging these councillors. We're engaging the staff. So it's not just one message going to one individual, but it's supporting the council and their understanding of why it's important through stewardship and engagement and protecting these natural assets. And then even further direct supporting their members of the public, doing outreach and education to the school groups there. And that people in the school, counselors have, in small Newfoundland, counselors have kids that attend those schools. So there's often direct or indirect influences from engaging those people that they find out through that engagement process. So that always has indirect or direct consequence impact in the community, regardless of outreach and education as an important aspect. How does it benefit? We're protecting these areas. So making sure that in 50 years, you can return to that same beautiful area along the shoreline, that there's walking trails in there, that you can still return to that beautiful area because it's managed for perpetuity for the community. It instills a sense of community pride. We're elevating the profile of these areas, making doing interpretive walks, bringing capacity to that area and highlighting how beautiful it is. Obviously, there's the ecotourism aspect, and that's certainly something that is a bit more of a key word or a buzzword of late. And then even the natural assets. That for a municipality, it's a dollar sign in those wetlands. And yes, absolutely, we're recognizing that value of the eco asset or the natural asset. But even that, within that, it's not the direct mode of what we're trying to sell here. There's also ecotourism. There's also the myriad of benefits, recreational value, the mental health benefits of going to these natural areas and just taking in that nature and seeing that. So that's the one benefit we're able to provide, but that's certainly not the sole benefit. And then increasing capacity for smaller towns. Certainly in Newfoundland and Labrador, John mentioned some of our municipalities have one part-time clerk. So how are you going to manage snow clearing and taxes and garbage collection in addition to stewardship and engaging your community? So this is where we support the municipality and do that engagement for them, because it's often it's supporting and increasing the capacity for these municipalities. So we have strategies of how we do this. I see we're closing in. I've got 3 minutes left before I think. So there's different strategies. It's doing outreach and education, restoring these wetlands, like what Serge has been doing in New Brunswick, organizing community cleanups, having walking trails, designing interpretive signs, so that when you're out there, you're learning about this information. You're hosting planting events, geocaching. So we're supporting the development of these in these municipalities don't have these. We're suggesting these potential ideas to bring these forward. So it's all about getting the community out, enjoying these beautiful spaces. We do outreach and education. We provide these workshop and programming to our community members who they ask for, or we're asking them if they're interested in this. But I think, as John, this is something that we like to hit home. The strength of this agreement is engaging the community and engaging the community from the public, but then also the leaders of the community, the people who are making management decisions on the land, who are the staff people zoning these areas, who are the councillors who are making decisions 50 years down the road. So it's supporting these people who are in their environmental decision making and influencing them, so it has a stronger benefit to the community. So we also do this. We do engage. We have biannual meetings where we like to bring our members together. In every municipality that has signed a municipal stewardship agreement is a member of the Stewardship Association, and then they also designate a representative to speak with us, to liaise with us, and also their town. This is a really important role. It's a direct relationship we have with that staff, with that municipality. And then they attend these meetings where biannually we meet once in the spring. It's a big formal. Then we try to have all our municipalities there come. It's a sharing session. It's a learning session about how different municipalities are doing this in their local area, and then how other people are doing it. So it's a way to benefit. It's a way to learn. It's a way to share some success stories, but then also struggles that municipalities are having. And those conversations are the ones where you can share influence, where leaders can share their ideas to each other and grow that, nurture that mindset of stewardship amongst these leaders in rural Newfoundland or across Newfoundland and Labrador. So I think these meetings are really important. It's in-person meetings so that people get together, talk about their conservation efforts in their municipality, but then also benefit and learn from other people. So they're educational engagement, sharing ideas, successes, but it's supporting those municipal councils and leaders that might not necessarily have avenues of support elsewhere. And it's building that ethic, building that mindset, that stewardship, that what they're doing is important in their local area, and then extrapolating that further into the entire province. So we don't do this alone. We're a member of the Eastern Habitat Joint Venture. We're a partner in that, and there are other committed partners on that we often draw upon, that we build upon. We highlight their efforts, such as Nature Conservancy, Birds Canada, Ducks Unlimited, Environment Climate Change, Indian Bay, Intervale. These are all community partners that we work with, that work across the province, that we're often deferring to or bringing into the conversation because they're the experts in birds, or they're the experts in waterfowl. So it's wetlands. So it's bringing those experts to the conversation and making sure they're also connecting with the municipality, supporting the municipality in their efforts. I don't know if we're gonna have, I don't know, I'm sure if we have time for questions, but I'll leave that there for you, Charles, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, both of you. That was really informative. I do have one quick question for you. Did you say 15 communities or 50 communities?
50. So we started in 1993 with Whitburn and Gander, just those two. And in 30 years, we've grown to have now 49 municipalities, one local service district, which is a different designation. But there's 50 communities that have signed these agreements in 30 years. And that in and of itself is a demonstration. There's 280 municipalities in our province, so there's a bit of a ways to go, but we're from coast to coast and reflecting the larger municipalities and the smaller municipalities. In 30 years, they've been able to grow from 2 to 50. That shows you the interest and the benefit it is for these smaller municipalities to capacity and all of that.
Yeah, it's quite impressive. I know, like here in New Brunswick, most of the smaller municipalities happen to find themselves on the coastlines, and that's where, you know, the lack of resources are as well, and they're the front lines of climate change. So yeah, they do need your types of associations to help them address that.
John,
thanks again.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh no, I could talk all day about this. I think there's it's an appropriate. It's a tool that works in Newfoundland and Labrador, and it's a tool that could work elsewhere. It just would be nuanced. Right. It would be different because there's different. Who's your partner? Like we really are able to benefit from a relationship with the province who's committed to this back in 1989, back in the day. So this is a legacy that we're building and continuing on that.
Oh, it's wonderful. Thanks again, Zachary and John and Serge, for your very informative presentations. Thank you, Patrick, for your interpretation work today, as well as Eleanor and Amanda for your technical help, and everyone who joined us today. If you haven't already done so, register for next week's event, part 3 of this 4-part webinar series. Part 3 will be a panel discussion entitled Overcoming Barriers and Next Steps, which will be moderated by Michelle Mullner. She's Technical Director of the Natural Assets Initiative. And our guests will be Serge Dupuis from the Université de Moncton, which I see here today. He was one of our speakers in part 1. We also have Jenna Miller from Climate Atlantic, and also a climate adaptation specialist with the government of New Brunswick. She'll be participating in our digital workshop, part 4. And special guest, Jillian Hudgens. She's an environmental strategist with the city of Fredericton. So I hope you all can join us. Thanks again for participating today, and look for me in your inboxes for directions for our next webinar series. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
You.